Meghan Markle just spent several days in the country her husband calls home, and across that entire visit, she was not captured by one single camera in it. Not one. No doorstep photograph, no wave from a car window, no blurry long lens shot from across a street, the kind that finds every royal eventually whether they want it or not. The kind that has found practically every other member of this family at some point on a British visit, no matter how carefully their security was planned. And this is a woman whose entire public career, every venture she has attempted since leaving the royal family, runs specifically on being seen. Angles, lighting, carefully chosen and controlled moments. Produce content designed deliberately to shape exactly how an audience perceives her. So hear me clearly, that is not bad luck. That is a plan executed with a level of discipline that is itself the story. And I am going to make you one promise before we go anywhere else. By the end of this video, I am going to hand you the one comparison that unlocks this entire trip. A comparison almost nobody covering this story has made, because everyone keeps reaching for the same lazy, obvious one instead. When we get there, the whole week will snap into focus like a photograph she never allowed to be taken. Stay with me. I have spent years inside the whispering end of royal reporting, the end where you learn how palaces brief, how Montecito briefs, and how to tell the difference between what a source knows and what a source wants. And the first thing that world teaches you is a discipline I am going to enforce ruthlessly through this whole video, because this story, more than most, is drowning in confident nonsense. We are going to keep two ledgers open side by side, call it the evidence ledger. Column 1 holds what is actually confirmed, reported by multiple outlets, acknowledged, on the record. Column 2 holds what is circulating, the theories, the claims, the speculation, some of it persuasive, some of it unproven, all of it clearly labeled. Every single item in this video will be filed in one column or the other, out loud, as we go. Because I think you deserve better than commentators who blur those columns together and present their guesses as settled fact. And here's the strange thing, the thing that made me sit up. In this particular story, it is the confirmed column, the boring column, that contains the most unsettling material. Let me show you. Start with what we actually know. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle reportedly brought their children, Archie and Lilibet, into the United Kingdom for this visit. King Charles III and Queen Camilla met the family at Highgrove House, the king's beloved country home in Gloucestershire, for what the palace described only as a private occasion. 4 words of description for a meeting years in the making. No photographs were released to any outlet. No statement was offered beyond the barest confirmation that it happened at all. And then there is the detail I keep circling back to, the one worth sitting with on its own before a single theory enters the room. Reports say the children arrived separately from Meghan entirely. Not one unified family walking through one door together in one moment. Separate arrivals. Nobody has explained that, and I have read every scrap of coverage. Sit with it. A family reunion where the family does not arrive as a family. And while we are in the confirmed column, spend a second on the palace's 4 words, a private occasion, because in my world, those 4 words are a novel. Palaces do not communicate by accident. Every syllable that building releases is weighed, argued over, and lawyered. When they want warmth, they give you warmth. A photograph, a line about how delighted His Majesty was. When they want distance, they give you silence. And when they want something acknowledged but sealed, they give you exactly this. A description so minimal it functions as a locked box placed politely on the table in front of the press. A private occasion, not a joyful reunion, not a family gathering, not even a meeting, an occasion, unnamed, unphotographed, unelaborated. Whatever happened inside Highgrove House, the institution decided the world would receive 4 words of it, and the Sussex side, for once, released nothing louder. 2 operations that normally brief against each other in stereo went simultaneously quiet. When the 2 noisiest rooms in royal media both choose silence about the same afternoon, that silence was negotiated. Remember that word, because it is going to matter again before we finish. Now, one thing in this confirmed column deserves to be handled gently, and I will do that, because honesty cuts both ways. Harry had reportedly seen his father in person only a couple of times across the previous 2.5 years. That is a genuinely long gap for a son whose father is managing a serious health situation. So, whatever else this trip turns out to be, underneath every theory we are about to walk through, a father with cancer got time with his son, and, by these reports, with grandchildren he has barely known. That is a human moment, and it deserves to be acknowledged honestly, on its own terms, separate from everything swirling around it. I am not here to spit on that. I am here for the question that moment does not answer. Because the reunion explains why Harry came. It explains nothing at all, about why Meghan was invisible. And her being nowhere near a single lens for the entire duration of a trip lasting several days is the part nobody covering this story has fully and satisfyingly explained. The warm Highgrove story is comfortable. The blank space around it is not. So, we are going to do the uncomfortable thing and examine the blank space properly. Here is the first theory, and I am naming it clearly and taking it seriously, because I think it is the most persuasive explanation currently on the table, more persuasive than scheduling, more persuasive than simple caution. Some royal watchers believe Meghan is not avoiding cameras because she is shy, or because there was genuinely nothing worth photographing. They believe she is avoiding them because she has calculated with real precision exactly what happens the moment she is no longer off camera and has concluded that every available outcome works against her. Every single one. To see why, you have to walk back into the argument she herself built. This is a woman who has spent years publicly and repeatedly arguing that the United Kingdom is not safe for her family. Not a stray comment in one interview. A sustained legal fight, taken all the way to court, over the level of protection she and Harry believe they are entitled to as private citizens who once held official roles. That argument is the load-bearing wall of their entire public position on Britain. And now watch the trap it builds around her the second she steps outside. If she steps into public view and the reaction from onlookers is warm, welcoming, ordinary, that quietly and immediately undercuts years of her own carefully constructed argument about needing extra protection in the first place. A warm crowd does not need armed security to manage it, and every barrister on the other side of that argument knows it. But if the reaction is cold, loud, visibly hostile in any way, that becomes permanent footage. Footage that follows her into every future headline about this family, replayed endlessly, clipped and reclipped for years, the soundtrack under every story she ever tries to tell again. There genuinely is not a version of showing up that resolves cleanly in her favor. Heads, she loses the legal argument. Tails, she loses the public one. Let me make that bind physical for you, because abstractions slide off and this deserves to stick. Put yourself inside it. You are standing behind a door in the Gloucestershire countryside. On the other side of that door is a nation of 60-something million people, several thousand professional photographers, and a camera in every single pocket. You have spent years telling a court, in sworn filings, that stepping through doors like this one is dangerous for you. Now imagine the two films that could be shot the moment you turn the handle. Film 1. You step out, a woman with a pram smiles at you, a pensioner asks for a photograph, somebody's dog wanders over, and the whole thing looks exactly like what it is. An ordinary safe afternoon in an ordinary safe country. Charming, warm, and absolutely lethal to your case, because that 30-second clip will be played in effect, if not in fact, against every paragraph you ever filed about danger. Film 2. You step out and somebody shouts something ugly and 100 phones swing towards the sound, and now that audio lives forever under every future project, every product launch, every interview, the permanent laugh track of your public life. Two films, both fatal, just to different organs. Now ask yourself what you would do, standing behind that door, knowing both scripts in advance. Be honest, you would not turn the handle either. The difference between you and her is that nobody built a career on your visibility, which is what makes her choosing the locked door so loud. And here is my unexpected connection, from a field that has nothing to do with tiaras, because the moment I framed it this way, the whole trip made sense to me. Game theory, the mathematics of strategic decisions. In game theory, there is a concept called a dominant strategy, The one move that beats every alternative no matter what your opponent does. Usually finding one is hard. But look at Meghan's decision matrix this particular week. Appear and be received warmly, the security case bleeds out. Appear and be received coldly, the footage lives forever. Appear and be ignored. For a personal brand built entirely on visibility, being ignored on camera is its own small death. Every branch of the appear side of the tree ends in a loss, which means the dominant strategy, the only move that defeats all three outcomes simultaneously, is breathtakingly simple. Do not appear, refuse to play, make the game itself impossible. And neither the warm crowd, nor the hostile crowd, nor the indifferent crowd ever gets the chance to exist. It is the strategy of a chess player who, seeing checkmate on every line, declines to touch the board. I want to be clear, filing this correctly in our ledger, that the motive here is column 2 theory. But the behavior it predicts, total invisibility, executed flawlessly, is sitting right there in column 1, confirmed, for anyone to see. Was hostility actually likely? File this next part carefully, because it matters that the fear did not come from nowhere. Some believe that if she ever does step into public view over there, a hostile reception is precisely what she has been bracing for, potentially on a scale approaching what some of the more pessimistic commentary has predicted for Harry himself. Nothing like that can be confirmed before it happens, obviously. But plenty of commentators have been predicting exactly this outcome for months, publicly, well before this specific trip was announced or planned. There is even a clip circulating that claims to capture actual audio of boos aimed at the couple, and whatever you make of that clip, its very existence tells you the temperature of the water. One brand and reputation management expert put it plainly, weeks before this visit even happened, that a cool reception, maybe even audible boos from a crowd, was a real and live possibility if she turned up somewhere. Emotions were already running unusually high, and oh, were they running high this particular week. We will get to exactly why in a moment. Nobody is saying it definitely would have happened. People are saying with real conviction that it is exactly the reason she might not have wanted to stand anywhere in public long enough to find out. And by every available piece of behavioral evidence, she is acting like someone who read those predictions carefully and took them seriously, rather than dismissing them. Which brings us to the calendar, because the timing surrounding this trip makes the whole theory land considerably harder than it would in isolation. If you were choosing the single worst week in years for Meghan Markle to test a British crowd, you could not have engineered a worse one than the week she actually got. This visit happened during the exact same week that Prince Harry lost his privacy case against the publisher of the Daily Mail. Not a setback, not a delay, a loss, confirmed by a real court, decided by a judge after a full hearing, with legal costs reported to be in the region of £50 million once you account for both sides of the litigation. £50 million, say it slowly. That is the budget of a feature film, spent on a case that ended in defeat, and Harry did not take it quietly. Standing outside the courthouse, directly to reporters, he called the ruling a complete and obvious whitewash. His exact words, not mine, and worth repeating precisely because of how much fury they signal from a man who rarely speaks that bluntly in public. A prince on a London pavement telling the world's cameras that a British court had whitewashed him. Now hold that scene in your mind and ask the question the fear theory asks. If Meghan had stepped into public view during that exact same week, what would she have been walking into? A crowd already primed and agitated by a very public, very recent, very expensive defeat, with her own husband's quote about a court he clearly feels was rigged against him sitting fresh at the top of every headline running that day. Commentators on one panel that week were merciless about it, calling the whole trip a train wreck, openly wondering whether Meghan wanted herself associated with a loss of that size at all, and asking a genuinely brutal question, which I pass along as their opinion and not established fact, about how anyone can trust what Harry says, even about his own family, if a court has found his claims wanting. Fair or unfair, that was the air in the room. If the bracing for hostility theory holds any water, and I think it holds considerably more water than most casual coverage has acknowledged, this was the single worst possible week to step outside and find out the hard way whether the crowd's mood had shifted. So, unsurprisingly, and I suspect very deliberately, she did not. And this was not even his first expensive walk to that particular well. Let me give you the timeline, because courtroom defeats, like buses, apparently arrive in convoys for this family. Back in January of 2024, Harry withdrew his legal action against the publishers of the Mail on Sunday over their coverage of his request for armed royal protection. He changed his mind mid-fight, walked away, and had to pay roughly £750,000 towards the Mail's costs, with probably a similar amount again for his own lawyers. So the man has been here before: withdraw and pay, or fight and lose. 2 trips to court against the same media stable, 2 bills, 0 victories. And each one of those bills lands on a household whose entire post-royal business model depends on an audience believing they are winning. Keep that thought, because the money is about to become the whole story. But first, a pattern. And once I show it to you, you will not be able to stop seeing it. Commentators have started asking out loud where Meghan goes whenever Harry is publicly bleeding. Think back. When Spare came out and Harry was doing the promotional rounds, when late-night hosts like Jimmy Kimmel were tearing strips off him over the book's revelations, where was Meghan? Nowhere. When he sat down with the BBC and unloaded on the royal family on the record, where was Meghan? Nowhere. When he has lost in court, where was Meghan? Nowhere. The pattern, as these commentators frame it, is that whenever her husband is going through something publicly difficult, she disappears from view, and one of them put the theory in the cruelest possible terms, saying, and I quote the sentiment as their opinion, that she does not want to be photographed on the arm of a loser. Harsh, maybe unfair, but run it against the record of this exact week. Harry visible at the courthouse, at his events, absorbing the loss in public. Meghan invisible everywhere, always. As a data set, it is uncomfortably consistent. And there were even commentators arguing that the mere fact of returning to Britain at all, after everything, was itself an admission of professional defeat, an admission that the Californian dream has not worked out, that the couple who swore they needed nothing from the institution are back at the door because they need something from the institution. One put it in the language of pure strategy, calling it Plan B, currying favor with the king because they may one day need to call on his services. Column 2, all of it, opinion and reading. But you can feel the weight of it stacking up. And here is the part most people get completely wrong about this stretch of the story. They assume the silence around her is empty, dead air, nothing happening. Wrong. Silence for this operation is never idle. Silence is where the work happens, which is exactly why the next layer of this story is not about crowds or courtrooms at all. It is about money, and it is the layer almost nobody has touched. Now, the money. Because there is a financial layer to all of this that almost nobody covering the story has connected directly to the fear angle, and I think it deserves its own honest flag, since parts of what follows are reported through credible sources and parts are still floating around unverified. Here is the reported part. Harry was in the United Kingdom around this exact same window specifically for Invictus Games Foundation events, the veterans sporting charity that remains, by some distance, the most genuinely admired thing he has ever built. And there are reports from multiple separate sources over recent months that the foundation has lost some significant major sponsor support across recent seasons. If true, that puts real and mounting pressure on matching donation requirements tied to certain grants based in the United Kingdom that the foundation relies on for a portion of its funding. Matching grants are exactly what they sound like. The money only unlocks if you can raise money alongside it, which means visibility is not vanity for that foundation right now. Visibility is revenue. A high-profile, well-covered Sussex appearance is worth actual, measurable money in donor attention and renewed public interest. And that raises a genuinely uncomfortable question. One I think deserves to be sat with honestly, rather than rushed past in favor of a simpler, warmer explanation. At this stage of this family's public life, is showing up or very deliberately not showing up ever purely personal anymore? Or is there always a second calculation running quietly underneath every single decision, a calculation about which version of events generates more headlines, and which headlines ultimately generate more donors and more revenue for whichever venture currently needs the oxygen? I am not going to pretend I know the definitive answer, because I do not, and claiming false certainty in either direction would be a dishonest thing to do to you. I do not think anyone outside their actual inner circle knows either, no matter how confidently some commentators in this space present their theories as settled fact. But I will say this. Once you know the foundation needs visibility, and you watch one half of the couple maximize visibility all week, while the other half reduces hers to absolute zero, you are no longer looking at one strategy. You are looking at two. Hold that. It is the doorway to the next theory. Before we walk through it, one more item for the ledger, and I am going to handle it with tongs, because this is exactly the kind of claim that careless channels launder into fact. There are unverified claims currently circulating that some Invictus-related funds were previously used to cover personal expenses, wardrobe reportedly among them. Let me be completely straight with you about the status of that. It is an allegation, not a confirmed finding of any kind. No independent audit or investigation that I am aware of has proven it, and if it eventually turns out to be entirely false, repeating it now as though it were settled would be genuinely unfair to everyone involved, so I will not. It sits in column 2, flagged in red, but it is part of the noise currently surrounding this trip, circulating widely enough to have entered the broader conversation, and here is why it belongs in this video at all. If there were any truth to it, even partial truth, it would add one more very concrete, very practical reason for Meghan specifically to want 0 cameras anywhere near her this particular week. Because a new photograph right now does not get read in isolation as Meghan visits Britain for a family occasion. It gets read against every unresolved question already sitting quietly in the background of this story accumulated over years. In that environment, every lens is a lit match. So here is theory 2, and I think it deserves far more attention than it has received, because it explains the inconsistency that has characterized this visit from its very first rumor. Some believe Harry and Meghan are not even fully aligned on what this trip was supposed to be in the first place. The theory goes like this. Harry genuinely wants his children connected to their grandfather and to their wider family heritage, and given his father's ongoing health situation, that desire has taken on a real and increasingly painful urgency. Time is not a renewable resource in that relationship, and he knows it. Meghan, by this reading, has far less interest in remaining tied to the institution at all at this point in her life and career. Her ventures face America, her audience is American. Britain, for her, is not a homeland, it is a liability file. Now, if that reading is accurate, watch how much it suddenly explains. It explains the entire on-again, off-again, we are coming, we are not coming pattern that has characterized every recent visit to Britain, far more convincingly than scheduling conflicts or logistics ever could. It explains the separate arrivals, the detail from our confirmed column that nobody else has accounted for, and it explains quite directly why Harry spent the week fully visible, in front of cameras, engaging with the public and the press at his events, while Meghan spent the exact same week in front of none of them, appearing nowhere, commenting on nothing. Two people quietly running two entirely different versions of what was, on paper, the same shared family trip under the same public banner for two genuinely different sets of underlying motivations. One trip, two agendas, 0 joint photographs. The arithmetic works. And now, the payoff I promised you in the first minute. The comparison that unlocks the week. Everyone, and I mean everyone, wants to measure Meghan against Princess Diana every single time this family generates a headline. It is the automatic comparison, the emotionally loaded one, the one that generates clicks, whether or not it illuminates a single thing about the actual situation in front of us. It is also, this week, completely useless. The comparison that actually matters, the one people keep skipping because it is sitting too close to see, is Meghan against her own husband, side by side inside the exact same 7-day window. Watch them. Harry walked into a courtroom in full public view. He lost, publicly and decisively. He said something quotable and pointed on his way out to a bank of waiting cameras, and he left the entire experience fully visible to a watching country, his dignity bruised but intact and recognizable. Whatever you think of him, he stood in the weather. Meghan walked into the exact same week, facing arguably similar and certainly related public pressures, and made absolutely certain there was nothing left for a single camera to catch, anywhere, at any point. For the entire visit, one of them took a visible public hit in front of the whole country and processed it in the open. The other made herself functionally impossible to hit, removing the possibility of impact entirely rather than absorbing any of it. Same family, same week, same hostile weather. Two opposite doctrines of survival. And whether you find her approach admirably disciplined and strategically sound, or find it instead quietly telling about where things actually stand inside that marriage and that career, probably depends on how much patience you personally have left for either of them at this stage of the story. But do not tell me it was an accident. Accidents are not this symmetrical. Which brings us to theory 3, the one that reframes everything else if it holds. Some think her absence is not primarily about fear of a hostile crowd at all, but about something more calculated and more forward-looking, controlling the story itself, staying fully invisible now, specifically so that whatever footage does eventually surface does so entirely on her own terms, at a time and in a format of her own choosing, rather than being scooped by a stray phone camera on some random Tuesday nobody planned for. And there is a concrete hook for this theory, filed carefully. There are reports that Harry may visit Althorpe House, the Spencer family's ancestral estate, the house where Princess Diana grew up and where she is buried, ahead of the 30th anniversary of Diana's passing, reportedly to gather footage connected to a documentary project currently in some stage of development. And this is not pure vapor, because Charles Spencer himself, Diana's own brother and the current custodian of that historic estate, has already made a public statement to the press acknowledging genuine interest around a potential visit of this kind, Diana's brother on the record engaging with the idea. Now, follow the implication all the way down. If a documentary really is part of what is driving this trip on some level, that reframes basically everything we have discussed. Suddenly, the low visibility, the separate arrivals into the country, the total absence of Meghan from every available frame, all of it could simply be footage waiting patiently for a release date and a negotiated market value, filmed during a stretch of days currently being sold to the public as personal, private, and entirely unplanned. In the streaming era, unseen is not the opposite of valuable. Unseen is the premium tier. An image nobody has is worth more than an image everybody has, and nobody understands that pricing model better than a household that has already sold its own home movies once. Now, before I stitch these threads together, let me steelman the other side, because I promised you honesty, and honesty means testing my own case. Could this all be innocent? Could she simply have wanted privacy, the ordinary humankind, on a sensitive family occasion? Of course that is possible, and the Highgrove meeting genuinely was a private family matter by any decent standard. But here is why the innocent reading strains and creaks the longer you hold it. Ordinary privacy is porous. Ordinary privacy gets breached by accident, by a passerby, by a telephoto lens at a petrol station, by the sheer ambient camera density of modern Britain. What we saw this week was not porous. It was hermetic, total, industrial grade. And there is an even stranger wrinkle in the record. Depending on which specific report you choose to believe on any given day, Meghan came, or Meghan did not come at all. Think about how remarkable that is. In the most photographed country on Earth, around the most photographed family on Earth, the coverage cannot even agree on whether she was physically present. That is not what an ordinary quiet trip looks like. That is what an erasure looks like, and erasures are engineered. Here is the convergence, and this is the intellectual heart of the whole video, so lean in. When one theory explains an absence, that is a guess. Reasonable maybe, but a guess. What we have here is stranger and far more interesting. 3 completely different and largely unrelated theories: fear of a hostile crowd, a marriage running 2 agendas, and a documentary being quietly banked, all independently predict the exact same result. Picture 3 archers, standing on 3 different hills, who have never met, loosing 3 arrows that land in the same square inch of the same target. Fear of the crowd predicts she stays invisible. Misalignment with Harry predicts she stays invisible. Documentary control predicts she stays invisible. Nothing. No photo released anywhere, no public appearance of any kind, no comment offered to any outlet. And here is the point that matters most. These explanations do not cancel each other out. They can all be a little bit true at exactly the same time, which I suspect is precisely why this trip refuses to sit still inside any single clean explanation, no matter how hard commentators try to force one. She could be avoiding a hostile crowd and simultaneously controlling a documentary timeline and quietly disagreeing with her own husband about the entire underlying point of the visit, all 3 operating at once. All 3 contributing independently to the same visible result. When 3 separate roads all lead to the same blank space in the public record, that blank space stops looking like coincidence and starts looking like what it almost certainly is. The single most efficient outcome available to her, whichever version of events eventually turns out to be the accurate one. And I want to zoom out for a moment, because there's a bigger stake buried in all this than one woman's camera shyness, and it deserves naming. The British royal family has run, for generations, on a very old, very simple bargain. The family gets palaces, deference, and a place above politics. In exchange, the public gets to see them. Weddings, balcony waves, christenings. The walk to church on Christmas morning. Visibility is not a perk of the role. Visibility is the rent. It is the entire mechanism by which an unelected institution stays consented to. That is why what gets photographed and what conveniently does not has been this family's core currency going back decades through multiple generations. Diana understood it. The late Queen understood it so deeply, she once remarked that she had to be seen to be believed. Now hold that bargain up against a person who extracts the fame the institution generates while contributing 0 visibility back to the country that generated it. Someone who, remember, was once reported to be adamant she was staying put in California and would never set foot on English soil again unless someone was going to put a crown on her head. Her words, as reported, and what a sentence they are: 0 rent paid, full residence claimed. Whatever you think of monarchy, and you are entirely free to think it absurd, you can still see why that asymmetry enrages people on both sides of the argument. Republicans resent the privilege without the service. Royalists resent the service being mocked. She has achieved the rare feat of uniting them. So where does this actually leave things, once you have sat with all 3 theories and accepted that none of them cancels the others out? It leaves us with predictions, and I love predictions, because predictions are the one place a commentator can actually be held accountable, and I invite you to hold me to these. Prediction 1. The fear of the crowd theory has to meet the calendar eventually. If it is right, expect her to keep skipping public appearances in the United Kingdom for as long as the underlying security argument still needs to hold up cleanly in ongoing court filings and legal proceedings. Because think about the exposure. One relaxed, warmly received public outing, one smiling walkabout, undoes years of careful legal positioning in about 4 seconds of unhelpful footage circulating online. The case requires the fear, so the behavior must keep performing the fear. Prediction 2. Expect more of these visibly mismatched trips going forward. Him fully visible and fully present at events, her somewhere else entirely, absent from every frame. Because 2 people who genuinely do not agree on the underlying point of a visit are going to keep producing visits that do not add up cleanly from the outside, no matter how many carefully worded joint statements eventually get issued to smooth the seams. Prediction 3, and this one belongs to the documentary theory. If footage from this so-called private week ever surfaces inside a commercial project, timed to the 30th anniversary of Diana's passing, then everything you watched this week was a production schedule wearing the costume of a family holiday, and you will be able to say you saw the shape of it months in advance, right here. Let me close the ledger properly. Every loop paid in order, exactly as promised. What is actually confirmed, stripped of every theory, is simple enough to say in a single breath. Harry came to the United Kingdom. He lost an expensive and very public case in open court against the publisher of the Daily Mail, with combined costs reported around £50 million, on top of the roughly £750,000 he paid out when he withdrew the earlier Mail on Sunday action in January of 2024. He called the new ruling a complete and obvious whitewash on the record to reporters. He attended his Invictus Games Foundation events, a foundation reportedly under real sponsor pressure. The family met King Charles III and Queen Camilla at Highgrove House, children reportedly arriving separately, no photographs, 4 words from the palace. And Meghan, who came or did not come depending entirely on which report you believe, left behind exactly nothing for anyone to point a lens at anywhere at any point. That is the confirmed column. The theory column holds the fear, the misaligned marriage, the banked documentary, and one red-flagged allegation about foundation money that remains unproven and must be treated as such. And the comparison I promised in minute 1 has been paid. Forget Diana, measure her against Harry. In the same 7 days, he stood in the storm and took the hit. She dissolved the storm by refusing to exist inside it. In a family whose entire currency is what gets photographed and what conveniently does not, choosing to be the one person who leaves 0 visual evidence behind for an entire trip is not nothing. It is not an accident, and it is not bad luck with timing. It might be genuine fear of what a hostile crowd would do to years of careful legal argument. It might be pure calculated strategy around a documentary timeline and a market value. It might. And this is honestly the theory I would put actual money on if you forced me to choose only one, be both at once, each reinforcing the other, neither one sufficient alone. So here is the line to carry out of this video and hand to the next person who calls it a coincidence. The most carefully produced image of Meghan Markle's entire career is the one that does not exist. Now it is your turn, because more than once in this saga, the sharpest catch has come not from anyone holding a press badge, but from an ordinary viewer connecting 2 dates before the papers did. Was her total absence from every camera this week fear of the crowd, control of a documentary, a marriage running 2 agendas, or something else entirely that none of us has considered yet? Tell me. Because the next time this family moves, and it will be soon, we will be watching the frame, and we will be watching the blank space around it even harder.